Okay, so I'm hoping the book will be educational. Well, why? Well, because maybe it would be better for people to be educated than not to be, so that they don't have to suffer so stupidly, and so they could be less malevolent, and that the world would be a less brutal place. That would be all right. So that's part of my goal. I'm a clinician. I want to fulfill that part of my moral obligation, to justify my privileged position in the social hierarchy, right? I'm a scientist. I want to test my hypothesis and see if they're correct, so I can advance the scientific domain and push human knowledge a little bit farther out into the unknown, right? And I'm doing that maybe because I want to be a good person, something like that. Okay, so now we're a long ways out in the moral hierarchy, and so now we might think about, well, what does it mean to be a good person? Does that mean something? Well, you think it does, because you know people who are good people, and you know people who aren't good people, and you make a qualitative distinction between them, and you know when you're being a good person and when you're not, and you make a qualitative distinction between that too. So I don't think we have to have a discussion about whether or not good and bad people exist. We might have a discussion about how you distinguish between them, but that's a different issue.
Hello and welcome here on my YouTube channel, A-Bit Hacks. You guys know it already. I have an exciting stream lined up for you. I have one of the founders of PowerCity here in interview today, and I will ask him all about the interesting things, how PowerCity will bring a new DeFi platform to PulseChain that we can all participate from. So with no further ado, let's bring up JustAskJesse. Jesse, how's it going?
Going great. Thanks for having me on. How are you doing today?
Doing really good. I'm enjoying time in Mexico. The sun is shining. Yuri and I are working more than ever, and I know that the whole community is doing that, and that's why I'm so excited to be able to have such an amazing guest here today. Thanks for all you are doing. Thanks for all your work. And today, the main topic will be PowerCity. Of course, we want to talk about all the dApps that you guys are providing and make it available for the Hexicans to use to have just way more out of their crypto. But before we start with our stream today, why don't we talk a little bit about the coins that we love, Hex, PulseChain, PulseX, even though they are out in the future and they are not displayed yet, still there's a lot of things that we can talk about. So let's start with Hex, for example, the recent things that are going on. The prices are going up already. People are saying the bottom was in at 1.5 cents. What do you say to the bottom theory? Are we now going to the moon?
So a lot of times these things are by the news. So when people thought that, well, Hex was like 0.008 cents when Richard first said, hey, I want to fork Ethereum. Here's the Telegram. Go learn about it, right? And I watched the price of Hex go throughout the duration of him telling people about this new fork he was building, from like under a penny up to 50 some cents. And the dump corresponded a little bit with the Bitcoin top, but also with, probably some frustrations of people thinking they're going to be rich in 6 months, and PulseChain wasn't there yet. So then you saw people start selling back out again, right? So to me, that whole pump was a classic buy the news event, or buy the news, sell the event, or sell the lack of an event, right? Because in the case of PulseChain, people are still waiting, right? Now, as Richard has started to give some updates about PulseChain, show some screenshots of the syncing process and such, almost simultaneously, you see people race to their wallets and start buying Hex again. So I don't think it's really any different. Like, fundamentally, these massive pumps correspond to the narrative. The narrative is, oh, PulseChain's almost here, or at least testnet v3. Let's go buy Hex so we can get a copy on the other side. And, tens of thousands of people race off and buy the price up. Will it last is the question. That's the question, right? So if the only reason they're buying Hex is because, oh, testnet's here, mainnet's right around the corner, I want to get a free copy. If that's why they're buying it right now at this moment, and that's why it's pumping, then likely those same people are going to dump it back down because they'd rather have the copies than PulseChain, right? So I think at some point, like it will go a little bit parabolic, likely. That's how it works. And then people will take profits, and it will be a transfer of wealth from many people to some other people.
Like as always is, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Here I have the KSP TV site, and here we have our 3 cars that we had on the 5 tour. One of them was the PulseChain car. We thought that PulseChain would come out way earlier, and that's probably why then the dump happened for such a long time. We're almost waiting for 2 years. It's crazy, but now it really feels like it's around the corner. Now it has changed its product a little bit, right? When we heard the first time about PulseChain, it was supposed to be a little bit different, and now we have Ethereum 2.0 out. Now Ethereum 2.0 is being forked, not BSC anymore. How does that affect you guys working on PowerCity? Any problems regarding to that at all?
Well, as far as the Solidity code, that's all the same, right? The Solidity code works whether it's a proof of stake or a proof of work, it's all the same. Some frustrations that all teams have had with V2B is the blockchain explorer for V2B. It kind of sucks, to be honest, right? So when you're going through a testing process and you're trying, you do all these thousands of transactions and you're, okay, this button works. The contract did exactly what it's supposed to. All right, let me test all this stuff. You need to verify those, that everything's functioning the way it's supposed to by looking at the blockchain explorer. And the blockchain explorer for V2B takes forever to update, right? You could do a transaction and days go by before your transaction shows up on the blockchain explorer. So it makes it really hard actually to test on V2B. I don't suspect that the same problem will happen on V3. I think everything will be smooth. In fact, there's a whole mechanism dedicated just to the blockchain explorer for the updated consensus model, right? So I don't think that'll be an issue. It'll actually be easier for people to build on V3 because of that, because of the blockchain explorer.
That's exactly what we want to hear from you guys. Like, I must admit, a lot of things are gibberish when Richard Hart is posting updates, when you are going really into depth, and talking about those things. Like, the normal user does not understand these things. The normal user cannot understand code. So to what degree do we have to trust the experts? To what degree do we have to trust the middleman with our decision if this is a good product or not?
Yeah, so there's always a level of trust. So audits are important because, the hope is that experts at a firm who look at code all day long can find something if there's a problem, and then the team can fix it before they go to lunch, right? That's the whole point of audits. But if you, realistically, if you look across the DeFi space, everything that's ever been hacked has some sort of audit already, right? The bridges that get drained, there's an audit. That didn't save everybody. What happened, right? Now, a lot of those things are just straight up thefts. The team goes into a wallet and drains the funds, drains a wallet, whether they use multi-sig. By the way, multi-sig is a joke. As far as if you hear a team say, oh, we have multi-sig, How are they supposed to prove it? They can't. You don't know if it's one guy with 5 keys or 5 guys with 5 keys. You have no idea. Or if it's 5 guys and all 5 guys have all the keys. You have no clue. Chainlink. I know there's some Chainlink lovers in the community. Chainlink has keys to all of the funds, to the wallet that pays rewards, to the node operators who are reporting prices across Aave, prices across hundreds and hundreds of DeFi protocols, right? What happens when that team or a guy on the team who has some keys drains the funds? All of those DeFi protocols go to zero, right? Because the liquidation points, the prices are all screwed up. Everything gets sold off. There's a major bank run and everything fails. So how do you prevent that in crypto? Well, it's very simple. If you're paying rewards get distributed through a smart contract, not through a wallet that people have access to, right? So there's a cool protocol coming to PulseChain, and that's Teller. Teller is an Oracle service, and oracles are absolutely necessary for DeFi protocols. And the way that they distribute, it's all through a smart contract, and there's a consensus mechanism, much like blockchain consensus, where anybody can participate in reporting price feeds. And then if the parameters aren't met, where all of the nodes, who can be anybody running a node, if there's a weird price feed that doesn't match the rest, the protocol will kick out the bad price feed. It's not included in the feed. Now, the reason we need these sort of things is because if you have Aave or a liquidity fork or any other DeFi protocol that is reliant on the price of something, you'll hear people say, just use PulseX. Just go straight to PulseX and get your price. But you can't do that. People, you have to understand that's extremely risky to go to one single source, one liquidity pool, one single contract liquidity pool, and get your price, even if it's time-weighted average, right? Because if you're going to a single point of failure to rely on a price feed, what happens when the liquidity provider there or the liquidity providers decide that there's a better price feed or there's a better pool they want to participate in? Maybe they don't like Pulse paired to USDC, and maybe that's where you're getting your price feed from. So now they go, wait a minute, let's pair Pulse to DAI instead because we like that better. So they yank their liquidity, and your protocol that's immutable was getting a price feed from that pool that no longer exists. And now all of your users in your protocol are screwed, right? So that's the risk of going straight to a single source, even with a time-weighted average, single source on PulseX. So how do you solve that? Well, you have to have a consensus mechanism that's feeding the price in from a huge community of users that are running nodes, just like blockchain nodes, and they're all agreeing on the price of something. It's not a single point of failure. It's fully disputable. There's a consensus mechanism. There's still time volume average, time weighted average. You have a backup oracle back to PulseX. You have multiple steps that ensure that if anything ever changed on the chain and a liquidity provider moves some coins from one pool to another, that you can still grab an accurate price for that thing for your DeFi protocol. So the old narrative of oracles are bad. Yes, single point of failure oracles are bad. Like if it's just a company that has a website feeding a price that they want to feed, yes, that's bad. If it's I would even argue if it's Chainlink and or modeled like Chainlink, who has access to the rewards that are paying the node operators, there is some risk there. What happens if the rewards stop getting paid out and the node operators stop getting paid? Well, now you have no price feed, right? So then you look at something like Teller and you say, wow, they've solved all of that. So now any DeFi protocol that wishes to launch on PulseChain can survive for years and years to come because of Teller through a consensus mechanism. So I just like that. We weren't planning on talking about that today, but I thought it would be important that people hear that because it does go against the normal narrative that you hear sometimes. And I invite people to go research how Teller works. Teller will be supporting multiple things: liquid loans, PowerCity, I'm sure the fiat and famous protocols. Teller exists to make sure that these things can survive for a long time.
You didn't want to bring it up, but I had it here anyways because this was one of your tweets. Talking about multi-chain partnership and Teller Oracle. What I heard from Chainlink does pretty much the same than Teller, but we do not know if Chainlink will be providing their services on PulseChain, right? So Teller does that. You do know?
They're not.
Okay, they're not. So this is exactly my question. So Teller does it differently. Teller will be available on PulseChain for you guys to utilize?
Yep. So they're fully partnered with Liquid Loans, who will be releasing information on how anybody can spool up a node and report data, right? And get paid for that too, and get paid for reporting data accurately.
So the question that I asked was, how much do we need middlemen, and do we need guys like you and trust guys like you that you are building the right product? Then you were talking about the auditors. I just had my eyes opened a couple of months ago with the Hexagons and the Time Value of Money documentary, where Tom Gillespie made the point, that the normal user cannot use and decide anyways if it's a good cryptocurrency, if it's decentralized, because at some point we always need to trust middlemen. And I'm just so happy that we have such a great community of hexagons like you and all the other people in our community that are able to read the code, that are able to do certain research that some hexagons are not able to do. And because it is open source, somebody who would have read the code, who can read the code, then will tell everybody else, hey, look, this is a point of failure here, or this is not a good product, and so on. So this is how I always derive my information. So I'm going into the community, talking with the people that are able to look into the code, like David Feeder, for example. And of course, you are here as well. So thanks for doing all of this. And you guys, if you want to follow along with the stream, because now we are talking about PowerCity, in the video description, you find all the links that you need to know about PowerCity. Go to Jesse's Twitter page, also follow PowerCity.io's Twitter. And then now we are going to PowerCity.io, because that's where we'll find a lot of information about the products that you guys are building. And luckily, you made it so easy for me. You have all the apps, all the applications here presented to us. And the first one is the PowerCity Core. So let's start talking about that a little bit. Maybe you can also give us an elevator pitch of PowerCity. You are one of the founders. Why did you guys decide that we need something like PowerCity, a platform to utilize and bring adoption to PulseChain? Give us a little bit of an elevator pitch here.
Well, we like PulseChain. We love the community. And we believe in launching products and services that people can use to interact with the things that they already like. So what you'll learn today is that you can use some of our services to maybe to accumulate some Pulse, or to take a loan out against your PulseX, or to auto compound strategies in something that you may already like. You'll also hear about a bridge index aggregator. I'm going to dispel some of the fears that people have about bridges, and I'm going to explain how we're very, very different, and how that brings adoption to PulseChain. And I think you'll just like what you hear. Everything, we believe in this thing that we call revenue over inflation. So we had the option to build a token, of course, like a lot of people try, where you just stake this thing and you get more of it. Okay. Now for Hex, that's beautiful. People like that, right? But thousands of other people have tried that, and they nearly always fail. All right, because they don't have the same community, and it just doesn't work, right? I'm talking about things like meme coins or tax coins or just inflationary coins, just random stuff, right? The only one that's actually proven itself long term so far has been Hex. So that's not where we're trying to go here. Where we're trying to go is offer tools that people can use on the blockchain, and then give the community the opportunity to participate in earning the fees from all of our tools.
And the first tool that we are talking about here is the PowerCity Core. Stake what in the core to earn a share of revenue generated from the full PowerCity ecosystem. And you said one thing really interesting to me. You can earn PulseChain, and this is here the main thing that we are seeing, that the staking rewards are paid in PulseChain. So let's talk about that a little bit. And why did you guys decide to do it like this?
Yeah, so that's actually not going to be the only thing that will flow to the stakers in the core. But so let's break down some of our decision making on that first. So people are already paying gas, and they pay their gas in Pulse. So if you're going to have a dApp and it's a cool tool that people are willing to pay a fee to use, we believe that the fee should just simply be in the same thing they're already paying the gas fee in. It makes it very simple. They don't have to go out and get a weird other token. You're not requiring them to buy your token or go scoop up a stable coin or something, right? They already have to have Pulse in their wallet. So if you're going to charge a fee on top of the normal blockchain gas fee, charge your fee in Pulse, and then feed that Pulse back to your community, who's the early adopters or the stakers in the core. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
All right. So the core is unique because it's an automated market maker. But the liquidity is all protocol owned. There's not one person who owns any of the liquidity that's placed in there. But it's still, you can still buy and you can still sell, and the price still goes up and the price still goes down. Now, if you look at a fully redeemable system, such as Liquidity, in Liquidity, you put ETH in and you mint a stablecoin, right? You mint LUSD. And the value that you placed in those vaults is it gets retained in there. Why is that important for a stablecoin? Well, you never have this problem where there could be a bank run and only 10 people can get out, and or 10% of the people can get out and all the rest are stuck, right? Every single one of those stablecoins is fully backed and redeemable. You'll see the same thing in liquid loans with the LUSD backed by Pulse, and you'll also see the same thing with the PulseX dollar coin. It's always fully backed and redeemable for $1 of PulseX. So we thought about that, and we said, why can't we create a mechanism where a coin does that, like that's not a stable coin? Because what you see often now is in regular Uniswap pools, people will deposit, the price will go up, the market cap will go up, the market cap gets insane, and market cap doesn't matter. Market cap is a vanity metric, sort of. Market cap is literally telling you there's that many tokens, value in existence, that people believe that they own, right? So if you see something with a $50 billion market cap and a $20 million liquidity pool, well, all those $50 billion can't get out. It's impossible, because the only liquidity to sell back into is $10 million, right? So that market cap is kind of a myth, right? So as price goes up in a regular Uniswap pool, it goes up, and the market cap grows and grows and grows, and everybody thinks they're going to be rich. And you know, you have more and more people who actually could get stuck, unable to get all the value out, right? So you want to create a balance. In Uniswap, you have these liquidity providers that could be good actors, they could be bad actors. There's typically both, right? Oftentimes in Hex, it's a majority of really good actors. But if you go to 99% of the rest of crypto, it's always bad actors who end up just yanking out all the liquidity as people buy, right? So no matter what the price does, there's nothing left. There's no meat on the table left for the people to actually sell back into. Maybe a couple people, and then the rest are all screwed because there's nothing left. There's no ETH left, or there's no USDC or whatever. Now in Hex, that's very carefully managed. That's very controlled. We have very smart liquidity providers who leave just enough for the community to thrive. Okay. But that's not the case in most crypto. So to eliminate that risk altogether, you do something called a continuous token model. It's actually super cool. Okay. You mint the tokens into existence as you place the value for those tokens into the pool. So if you wanted to buy Watt, you go to this thing it looks just like a swapping platform. So there's a swap. You see how there's a swap tab. So you would click that and you can deposit Pulse, which goes into the pool on the other side, just like it would on Uniswap. And it stays there and it mints you the tokens. It mints them for you right then and there, right? On a curve. So every single consecutive token is still more expensive than the previous one. Now, the value's in the pool. Anybody can come back if they want to, and they say, well, I have some Watt, I want to sell them. And they can sell those Watt, which burn themselves back out of existence, and it retrieves some of the Pulse from the pool on the same curve, just the other direction. So you have this thing that still has upward price action and downward price action. The more people buy, it goes up. More people sell, it still goes down. And it also closely links, because of that Hart's Law thing, the price action of Watt to what's happening with Pulse. So if there were no buyers and sellers and Pulse goes up in value, well, guess what? That pool, that protocol-owned liquidity pool, it's just growing and growing and growing in value because Pulse is worth more. That's literally supplying the value to all the tokens that are minted in existence. So if Pulse goes up in price and people are holding Watt, you can actually come back and sell and you get back some Pulse that's worth more. You just rode the price action. It just tied those two things together. That Hart's Law is extremely tied together, more so than you would find on a normal Uniswap pool, right? So it's really cool. It takes this model of like making something fully backed. It's not really redeemable. Redeemable isn't the word. It's swappable. When you buy it, it mints itself into existence because you place the value for it in the pool. And when you sell it, it burns itself out of existence and it retrieves the Pulse from the pool and gives it back to you, right? So that's how Watt comes into existence. Now, the other part of the core is the staking side. So you've heard me say that out of all our protocols, we have these fees that are generated and they got to go somewhere. So the majority of them get fed to the stakers of this Watt token. So we couldn't really create a mechanism for you to stake Pulse, right? I guess we could have done like a wrapped Pulse sort of thing. We opted to use a protocol and liquidity pool where Pulse is placed. It gives you this other thing that you can go stake. You can always go back the other direction to get that Pulse back if you want to. But now you have this tool, and we call it a Watt. You stake that for the fees. Now, we're going to go down some rabbit holes on the staking mechanism. You're not paid in inflation. Watt is not inflating itself to you because you're staking it. When you stake it, you're just earning the fees from people using all the tools and services, right? The fees are paid in Pulse. They're also paid in a little portion in PulseX dollar coin and a little portion in PulseX. We have the ability, as we launch other protocols, to have any fees in whatever token those are get fed back to the Watt stakers, right? So as a Watt staker, you could be collecting a ton of tokens. You could stake that one thing and you might be getting some Pulse, you might be getting some stable coins, you might be getting some PulseX. You're just getting a whole bunch of stuff for staking one thing. Now, we all like Hex, right? We're all fans of the Hex ecosystem. So we took a little bit of the narrative around Hex and we said, let's do something similar for Watt. Why don't we have a bigger, or not a bigger, better, but a longer, better mechanism so that the earliest of stakers have an ever increasing share of the fees that are flowing? How do we do that? We don't have inflation. Well, it's actually super easy, right? So everybody's who's staked on day one, if you staked 100 Watt tokens, okay, and somebody comes along on day two and they stake 100 Watt tokens, guess what? They're not getting the same amount of fees as you. You have more fees than them. They will have to provide more Watt or go purchase more Watt to gain the same staking position as you. Because there is a bigger, better, longer, better. The longer you're in the pool, you have an ever increasing, everybody else in the pool with you also has an ever increasing share of the pool. So when somebody else comes in after you, they have to play catch up a little bit. They have to come in with a little bit more value if they want the same position as you. The way that works, everybody goes up by 1% a day. 1% sounds like a lot, but it's really not, because if you go up by 1% and I go up by 1% and we're the only two people in the pool, we actually still have the exact same position. The only way it affects is like the next guy who comes in, right? So it's got this cool mechanism that's very much like a T-share, right? So a T-share gets more and more expensive over time to get the pool for the Hex, right? Well, in our thing, we just have, we call these things amps. You've staked Watt, you have amps that are applied to your position, and you get more and more amps every day. So the longer you're in there, your amps are actually what's determining your share of the pool, right? So you have an ever increasing share of the fees. If you're a day one guy, it could look really good because a day 30 guy might have to buy 30% more Watt than you. And if there's been any, to get the same size position, and if there's been any price action, upward price action, because it has a little bit of price parity with Pulse, or because people are racing to the door to buy Watt, they might not have to pay 30% more than you. For dollar value, they may have to pay 2 times what you paid, 3 times. I don't know. It all depends on the price action. So this all should sound very familiar to Hex, but it pays out in the fees. You tracking so far?
As longer
Because there's
you're
one other step
basically staked, every day you have like a little bit more of an advantage for compared to the new guys that come in, and you earn the fees in PLS, right?
Yep, exactly. One more piece to this. Your position is actually secured with an NFT that's in your wallet. So when you create a stake, an NFT shows up. You are welcome to sell that on a secondary market, such as our PixelPark, for example. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, imagine your rewards that you're earning are always claimable. You can push the claim button at any time and have your rewards. They show up liquid in your wallet, and your stake position remains in place. You can combine stakes, right? You can combine 2 stakes into 1 stake. But if you end your stake, you stop accumulating rewards, of course, right? Because you're no longer staked. Now you just have back your original watt. You have a choice. You could go sell them, do whatever you want with them. But if you've been staked and you have an ever increasing share of the pool, and there's other participants that are trying to come in after you, right? Why wouldn't you just sell your stake on a secondary market at a premium over and above what the underlying watt that created the stake was worth? Instead of unstaking 100 watt tokens, for example, and then you can go sell 100 watt tokens, what if you just kept the stake in place and you could actually sell those 100 watt tokens for the value of 150 watt tokens or 200 watt tokens? Just list it up for sale. Now somebody else gets your stake and now they're accumulating the fees and you just got a premium, right? So that relieves some sell pressure off of watt itself, because there's, just like with, you see with Hedron and Icosa and stuff, our system has that similar mechanism in place where you can just sell your stakes.
And everybody seems to be winning. The guy who sells it on a secondary market for a premium, he gets a better price. And the person who then buys it as well, because now he's able to generate more fees, which he would not be able if he would just stake the watt by himself, right?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
And then, like you said as well,
the people say it's
go ahead.
Some people may say, well, is this competing with Hex? No. It actually gives a mechanism that has people locking up Pulse in a trustless smart contract. We don't have the keys. It's protocol owned, right? It's a mechanism for people to put their Pulse to work for them into the core, and then actually earn Pulse and other things along the way from people using fees across the blockchain, across all our different tools. So while the mechanism itself models some of what Hex is doing, because it's awesome, it's not a competitor, right? It's specifically designed for people to use Pulse, put their Pulse to work for them, get this tool that they can stake for the fees and all of this stuff.
Well, the people that are saying that it's a competitor, they do not understand that basically everything is a competitor. And even Apple stock is a competitor to PulseX, for example. Everything where financial energy can be invested is then a competitor to everything. At least this is how the maxis are seeing it, right? So all of that you were talking of is just the PowerCity core, where you can stake the watt token. And you really went down the rabbit hole. Is there anything else that you have forgot to mention about the core? Or should we go on to the next?
I think
there's so many dApps.
I think we pretty much covered the core pretty well. If anybody has questions, by the way, we do have an active Telegram, t.me/PowerCityIO. Go there, ask all your questions. We'll go down any rabbit hole you want to.
So the link that Jesse was just talking about of the Telegram group, you find it here in the video description, t.me/PowerCity.io. And somebody here in the chat is saying you might need another SEC, one more SEC, but luckily this is not needed. The SEC is still open. Later on, we will talk about the sacrifice now here as well a little bit. But first, let's go into the next topic, which I thought was really exciting as well. PortalX Bridge, and now with this tool, you guys are able to onboard people from other blockchains into PulseChain. I think that's a really important part of PowerCity. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, so it's important to start out by saying that we're not really a bridge. We're a bridge and DEX aggregator, right? Now, most people don't even know what the word aggregate means. So it's very, you use our thing and yeah, you're going through a bridge if that's what you want to do. So it's easy to say PortalX Bridge. All right. Now, let's dispel some rumors first about how bridges. Let's talk about how bridges work. A typical bridge will have, imagine two blockchains, and you have a token on one chain and you want to go to the other chain. In a normal bridge, what you do is you bring that token in, it gets pooled, it gets retained by the team who has admin keys to that pool, by the way. And then a smart contract will mint you a representation of that token or a wrapped token on the chain that you're trying to go to. All right. And everything feels fine and dandy because you started out with hex on one chain and you went through a bridge and now you have hex on the other chain. But it's not the real hex. It's a wrapped hex. And it is a different contract number than the native hex, perhaps, right? So it starts to get really confusing and liquidity depth and stuff becomes an issue. So let me give you an example of liquidity depth being an issue. You actually find hex on Polygon, on Matic chain. And how it got there is somebody took some hex, went through a bridge. The bridge took the original ERC20 hex and holds it in a big pool. And a smart contract mints you a hex, HEX ticker symbol that's compatible on Matic chain and just spits it out. It's in your wallet address, right? So you're like, oh, great, cool. I have hex on Matic chain. All right. So then you race off to a liquidity pool over on Matic. You say, well, let me try and swap this thing, or let me buy some more of it or whatever. And the liquidity depth is really, really, really low. Low liquidity, prices move the hardest, right? So back on ETH chain, maybe you had a liquidity pool that had, I don't know, $5 million of USDC in there. But now you're on Matic chain with this wrapped fake hex, and you're like, oh, I go to the liquidity pool and there's like $50,000 here, right? 50,000 USDC. So now you try and do a swap or buy some more or something, and you see that you eat a whole bunch of price action, a whole bunch of slippage. So the money that you're trying to save because you're on a cheaper or faster, a cheaper chain, you're actually losing because the liquidity is so much thinner because the real thing is back on the original chain, right? So that's one problem with a typical bridge. When you bridge through, the liquidity will never be thicker on the chain you're bridging to than it was on the chain, the native chain that you came from. Never, right? Unless everybody ditches ETH and all the liquidity providers across ETH say, you know what? Let's put all our eggs in one basket and go through this bridge and give up our ERC20s to a central entity that has access to this wallet with all this counterparty risk. And they'll mint us a representation on this new chain and we'll go play over there. That would be a horrible decision because these bridges do get hacked, or the entities, those wallets sometimes get drained, right? It's a really bad situation. All these side chains that are around ETH that people are bridging to, everything's fine and dandy until, oops, some money went missing out of those pools. Then what you're left with is basically a fractional reserve system where, let's just take Hex for example again, right? People bridged into Matic, into Polygon, and you have these representative Hex tokens that are supposed to be redeemable back for the original if somebody was to go back the other direction. If somebody was to take one of those Matic compatible tokens and go back to Ethereum chain, that thing would burn itself out of existence and release an original Hex ERC20 back into your Ethereum wallet, right? So going one way, it's a lockup mint. Going back the other direction, it's a burn and a release. Okay. So if that pool gets drained, as you often hear in bridges, if that pool gets hacked or something, that is no longer redeemable. That represented, that representation token can't be redeemed. The people are literally stuck on Polygon with this token that they cannot go back the other direction. You always hear of these bridges. Oh, $100 million hack. Well, it doesn't have a direct effect on the holders of the tokens on either side of the chain, but it does have a knee-jerk reaction where all the people on the side chain realize, oh, shoot, this thing's no longer redeemable. I can't go back the other direction unless I do it right now. And then you have a race to the door. It's called a bank run. And everybody starts selling out of it as quick as they can because they don't want to be in one of those wrapped assets that was just the original for it was just stolen back in the bridge behind them. Right. So that's this major problem with bridges. There's this counterparty risk. And it's been a super challenge how to get, like, how do you expose yourself the least with this, with bridges, right? Well, I like to tell people, don't have wrapped stuff, period. Right? So if you go through a bridge, why would you want to hold a wrapped thing when all of that risk of the thing you're holding lies in that bridge? Right? You would want to be in a native asset on the chain you're going to. Right. So now that people understand how most bridges work, let me tell you what our aggregator does. So our aggregator, everybody, by the way, everyone has to use bridges to get stuff in, right? You want to go into PulseChain with ETH stuff, you have to go through a bridge. You want to look, bridges are essential, but they carry risk. What our aggregator does is eliminate some of that risk for you and make your job of getting into a chain much easier and make the onboarding process for people much easier. So let's go through an example. By the way, our aggregator, our bridge aggregator, will allow you to go across back and forth between 20 different blockchains with some like 15,000 tokens, right? Tons and tons of tokens. So you're not limited to just like, oh, I see 5 things I can bridge, right? You can literally say, I have this token on this chain. You select your target chain. You select the token that you want to end up with. You click the button. A few seconds later, you have the token that you're looking for on the chain you were trying to go to. Now, let me walk you through that. So let's say somebody's on Binance and they do not use our bridge aggregator. And you convince this Binance guy, hey, PulseChain is really cool. You should bring some of your money over and play around on all these cool things over here. Okay. What he would have to do, he'll take his random token, his random meme coin, and he'll have to go swap it for something like BNB, something he knows is bridgeable back to Ethereum chain, right? There's one transaction. All right. So now he goes through the bridge. He goes to Ethereum chain. All right. Two transactions. Now he's got wrapped BNB on ETH chain. Now he's going to go and he's going to try and swap it for something that he thinks or he finds is bridgeable into PulseChain. So maybe that's going to be, he finds wrapped Pulse. Oh, wait, BNB, wrapped BNB isn't paired to wrapped Pulse. So first he has to do another swap, right? So he swaps into something like, I don't know, like ETH, okay? And then he's like, oh, okay, ETH is bridgeable, maybe, right? Or maybe he has to swap that for wrapped Pulse. Okay, so he swaps for wrapped Pulse. Good to go now. Now he can go to the Pulse Ramp bridge and he can go through that. There's 5 transactions so far. Okay. Now what he was actually looking on PulseChain was to go buy PulseX. So now he can take his Pulse, his original Pulse, because his wrap Pulse was burnt and they gave him original Pulse. Now he can go off to PulseX and he can swap and he can get some PulseX. So minimum 6 transactions to come into PulseChain. Do you think that you can actually walk a guy through all those steps? It's ridiculous. It's completely impractical. Nobody will ever come use PulseChain because it's too hard. You have to go through 6 different steps and pay a boatload of gas fees along the way. Okay. It is really, really bad for adoption. All right. So PowerCity, we recognize this. We said, you know what? We have got to make this easier for people. Way simpler and quite a bit safer too. So instead of interacting and opening up all these token allowances on their wallet and having to interact with all these 6 different contracts, what we're going to do, what our thing does with our partnership with multi-chain, is it literally scans all of the dexes and 20 different blockchains, and it finds a route for your trade. So if you have a token on Binance, right, you literally say that's the token you want to use. You select PulseChain as the chain you want to go to. It scans PulseChain. It gives you a list of tokens, or you can start typing or whatever, what token you would like to end up with. Okay, you select the token that you want to end up with, and the protocol will list out a list of routes for you to get there, right? Maybe, and it'll show you the fee along the way, right? Because, you know, it's got to do all these swaps or whatever, right? So it lists out a list of trade routes with the corresponding price and how many tokens you're going to end up with or whatever, right? And you pick one of them, the one that you like the best because it gives you the most value, or you see maybe one of them's using your favorite bridge, you know, Pulse Ramp or whatever. You say, yep, that's the route that I want to take. You click the button and then bam, one single gas fee. It does the entire routing for you in one click, and now you find yourself on PulseChain with the token you're looking for, right? So it's a no-brainer, right? And by the way, it'll do this on-chain. You don't even have to go from one blockchain to another. You can just use it as an aggregator on the chain that you're on, right? So if you're on PulseChain and you're like, hey, what's the best rate that I can get for these 2 tokens I want to swap? You just put it in our PortalX. It'll find you the best rate or a list of rates. Okay, you click the button, you get the best trade for your, you know, for your money, right? So absolutely essential. Hands down, that is an essential thing to bring adoption to PulseChain, in my opinion.
That's why I wanted to bring it up. When I saw it, PortalX, really, really exciting. Makes the onboarding so much easier. Now I don't have to explain the 6 different steps for somebody to bridge from this ecosystem to, you know, PulseChain. And I can even see that we have here PowerCity will build a lower cost route to transfer money from Coinbase, Binance, Kraken, and other centralized exchanges. So how does that work? Because I can imagine that is another vital part when it comes here to PortalX Bridge.
Yep. So there are services that offer up or will be offering up their API that can be integrated into on-chain protocols for fast fiat on-ramping. In fact, I do have to give a shout out to Coast Protocol, who's got all their licenses in place for offering a fiat on-ramp into PulseChain. And I hear that they're going to have an API that can be integrated into other protocols things, right? So we look forward to, you know, other cool things that are coming to PulseChain as well.
And you were mentioning Coast Protocol. I think this is the one you are talking about, right? They're working behind the scenes to make onboarding easier to PulseChain, to bring fiat money directly to PulseChain. And then with your beautiful bridge, PowerX, now we have a tool to bring money from centralized exchanges or other EVMs chains really easy with PortalX. I think that's a great, great tool that you guys are building there. We do not have too much time anymore. It's beautiful to have you on stream because you make it so easy. You know, you carry the whole stream without problem. That's beautiful. You were talking about at one point that you can sell your WOT stakes in your own PixelPark NFT Marketplace. Let's mention that really quick, and then I want to go on to the Earn protocol because I think that's also a really interesting part of PowerCity. So tell us a little bit about the NFT Marketplace and then...
Yeah, PixelPark is it's actually our biggest build, and it takes the longest and has the most developers. You hear some really cool things that we're building. You're going to see some really cool things all wrapped up inside of PixelPark as well, right? We understand that the NFT space is huge and people like to trade their artwork, sell their artwork, do all sorts of things, but we think it goes a lot deeper than that. Let me give you an example. We have a partnership with Boxable Tiny Homes. They make tiny home, like these little box homes you can buy, like the size of a container. It unfolds, and then like it's literally a house in a box that unfolds. It's pretty awesome. We had one at our PowerCity party in Vegas. You remember that?
Yeah.
They will be selling NFTs that secure your tiny home if you want and put you at the top of the list, right? So there's a big wait time if you call them directly or you order one directly. Well, you can actually just we'd like to see real world things make their way into blockchain transactions. That's the only way that blockchain is ever going to be mass adopted, is if real world stuff can be purchased or transacted or property rights secured, so on and so forth, through the blockchain, right? Otherwise, all of this is just complete speculation. So you can use you can use your Pulse or your PXDC stablecoin or whatever, and you can go and you can buy a Boxable Tiny Home NFT and then use that to redeem back for your Boxable Tiny Home. You just got to give them your address and pay the shipping, right? So that's cool. We got that partnership. You'll see some really cool stuff like that, real world stuff on PixelPark. There's a ton of other features, things that you can do as an NFT creator on PixelPark that you still do not see on OpenSea or Looksware, or Uniswap has NFTs now. And when Uniswap announced the other day that they were doing NFTs, I raced off to go see what they were up to. And I was like, oh, good. They still haven't caught on to what, some stuff that we're bringing. So we actually think PixelPark is so advanced in the NFT space that it blows all of those other things out of the water, completely out of the water. And no, we're not sharing any of those secrets yet. So you have to stay tuned.
That's great. And I just wanted to pick up on that really quick. I'm excited for that. You're building a whole ecosystem, and this PixelPark NFT Marketplace, a really substantial part of that. But the next part that I want to talk about is the Earn protocol here on your webpage. I didn't find too much information here, but when you go to PowerCity, to the Twitter, we are getting excited about Earn protocol, deposit plsX into a vault, mint PXDC, stake PDXC in the stability pool, earn and plsX, stake earn in the staking pool, earn plsX, bringing stablecoins to PulseChain. So why are stablecoins so interesting and so important for crypto overall, and why did you decide to create your own?
Well, crypto goes through cycles, right? You got bear markets, bull markets, things go up and down in value. And the only way you can gauge your value is by comparing it against something you're familiar with, right? So you go to Uniswap right now and it displays the dollar value to you. The thing, like you go buy some hex and you're like, oh, I want to buy, $1,000 for the hex. It literally says right next to it, $1,000. That's the value you're about to buy, right? Because that's what everyone likes to do right now. We can all hate the dollar because of runaway inflation or whatever, but the fact is that's what we measure everything off of. So because the entire world is measured off of the dollar, it gets a little awkward if you don't have that measuring stick on a blockchain, because now you're just trading all sorts of ratios, very much like when PulseChain first goes live and everyone's just ratio trading, but they don't know what everything's worth. So many people will get wrecked and they won't realize it until later. So many people will actually do really well and they won't realize it till later, when the dollar value is actually available for them to know, right? So without stable coins, you're just swapping one thing for another thing, and you have no idea what that other thing is worth. You have to have tokens paired back to a stablecoin. Now, most stablecoins are trash. Stablecoins on there's been a slew of stablecoins that are they call them algorithmic, and they have this ridiculous minting process where they just mint more into existence, thinking that the supply increase is going to cause people to go sell them, and then they burn some out of existence, and they think people are going to buy them because they're more rare, and
it never happens
they
this
have
way.
really weird. Yeah, or they have like they make you collateralize their own thing that they're minting and burning too, right? So it like really poor mechanics that eventually cause death spirals. And I talk about a lot of these failed protocols on my Twitter. Many of them I called out months before they failed too, by the way, because most of them are broken. Now, DAI is close. But I hope Richard's watching because I believe Richard likes DAI. But DAI, in my opinion, has some major, major failure points. Number one, DAI is minted into existence through Maker protocol. Maker has a governance system. The code can be changed. And the primary voter in Maker right now is Circle, a central institution who now controls the entire voting rights of Maker. They now own DAI, right? They can make any changes they want to. Now, kind of, because governance systems are not really what you think they are. So just because a whole bunch of people use their token, connect into a wallet, and they vote, you still have a developer that has to go in and make those changes. Somebody who goes in, types out the code, hopefully does an audit, because they're running it on a test net before they upgrade the mainnet version. You have this risk still of there's always at least one guy who can go in and change the code. Somebody has to be able to update it. Just because a bunch of people voted saying they want a certain thing to happen in a governance protocol, you still got the risk of somebody can change the code, right? So it's not immutable, right? So you lose immutability. You have high centralization because Circle owns it all, like all the voting rights. And some of the mechanics in DAI are actually broken too. Let me give you an example. When a liquidation happens, because the liquidation point in Maker is 130%. So if a guy was to get liquidated, he actually loses like 30% over what he's already minted. He may have minted 100 DAI, but he just lost $130 worth of ETH over there, right? He's down 30% if he's liquidated. That's stupid and unnecessary. But for Maker, it has to be that way because of how long the liquidation process takes. If ETH is ever liquidated because of a vault that got down to 130% collateral in Maker, it takes that ETH and it sends it to an auction process that takes 6 freaking hours. Okay. Now, if a whole bunch of vaults get liquidated or a big guy gets liquidated, and during that 6-hour window, the price of ETH continues to fall, there's actually a risk that the system becomes under collateralized during that 6 hours and nobody buys the debt. And when that happens and you have an under collateralized stablecoin, everybody races to the door. You have what's called a bank run and everybody gets out. So as much as you hear in the community, oh, DAI, it's decentralized. No, the fuck it's not. Excuse my language. No, it's not. Because Maker owns the voting rights. And there's literally a dev who can go in and change the code if a vote is made and he wants to change the code. And it's got a weird 6-hour liquidation process that in a black swan event in ETH will under collateralize DAI and everyone does a bank run. I don't like it. And I try to tell people about it all the time. Liquidity literally identified these problems. Robert, the founder of Liquidity, said, wow, those literally are single points of failure in DAI and unacceptable. You should launch a stablecoin protocol that's completely immutable, that nobody can change the code. Nobody can vote. Nobody can, no dev can come in and say, oh, everybody voted. Let me just change the code to what they want. None of that. It's all gone. It's completely immutable. Once it's launched, that's it. Just like Hex. Just like Richard tells us all the time. Immutability is best. All right. All right. So he solved that. And then he said, well, it's got this weird six. And by the way, by doing that, you don't have a central entity, a central exchange, or an institution like Circle who can come in and say, oh, we're the big boys. We're going to own this protocol. Right. So it's literally decentralized. It's the people's product. Right. It fits the ethos of Hex. And then he fixed the piece of the 6-hour liquidation process, and he created what's really an instant liquidation. And it's really, really cool how that works through a network of participants that absorb the liquidation instantly because they want to. All right. So now that everyone's heard that, let's go through what Liquidity or Earn protocol, same thing because we're a fork, what that actually looks like. So it works against PulseX as your collateral. We believe that PulseX, because of its network of believers, the people in the PulseX Telegram, the liquidity pools that people have created and are playing with on PulseChain testnet, the mass amount of value that we think that people will be playing with, and the single-sided staking and all the things you can do with PulseX, we actually think liquidity is going to be pretty deep for PulseX, and that it's going to have very good price performance. When you compare it against things like Cake token, right? Cake only has a few of the things that PulseX will have. PulseX will have a cool buy and burn mechanism. It's got all sorts of stuff to help it out. All right. So we think it's going to do better than Cake. We think it's going to do better than Uni token, which doesn't do anything. It's a governance token too, which is trash, right? So that's all Uni token does, right? There's no, I think you can only vote with it, right? So when you compare it, it's like literally in the entire crypto space, PulseX should be the best performing, hopefully, right? No expectations. Nobody has a crystal ball. But you compare it against every other DEX token in history, and PulseX is doing way, way more. So we're extremely bullish on PulseX. So we said, wow, this is a perfect asset to use as collateral. You already have the option to do that with Pulse, with the Liquid Loans protocol. Of course, you can use our front-end amplifier to do that. But we said, well, we want people to be able to not have to sell their PulseX as well. Because what happens when you sell? Oftentimes 36% capital gains tax. The price goes down. You no longer have the coins. And then if the price keeps going up and you got rid of your coins, you cry about it later because you dumped your coins, right? So you create this mechanism where people can deposit into their own vault. It's completely immutable, trustless, no admin keys, the whole 9 yards, all the stuff that people like. Somebody asked real quick, what happens if PulseX has low liquidity? Well, I believe that's actually impossible. The buy and burn pools have to be very huge. All of the single-sided staking mechanisms, so to stake PulseX for these random other tokens, PulseX is going to be paired to everything. And what the OA has shown us on PulseChain is that the biggest liquidity pool, at least on testnet, is PulseX paired to Pulse. And it's massive. It is enormous on PulseChain testnet. So you could say the same thing about any token. What happens if Pulse has low liquidity? Well, I guess we're all screwed and we're all stuck. Okay. It's literally out of our control. right? But we do think that it's going to be a really good performing asset with big, thick liquidity. So you can put into your own vault, you can place up collateral. You can choose your collateral health. Of course, the minimum is 110. Some people like to collateralize super high. The minimum collateral health is 110 because that's where the liquidation point would be, right? Some people might be at 1,000, 5,000, 200, 300%, whatever you want, right? You can mint some stable coins, which are called PXDC, off of the collateral that you placed up. So again, with a minimum health of at least 110. So, let's just run through a scenario. I'm going to place $100,000 for the PulseX into a vault. I'm going to say, you know what? I want a $40,000 loan, right? And then I click the button and bam, in my wallet shows 40,000 PulseX dollar coin. And I can go do whatever I want with those. It is backed by the value that I placed in. All right. Now, let's say the price of Pulse goes up. Cool. I actually have all of that excess value that I had in there. That was all mine. Minus 110% of the value, right? So $4,000 is actually stuck until I pay back some of the debt. But all the rest of that, $56,000, I could have actually withdrawn that if I wanted to. Or I could have withdrawn some of that PulseX. Or I could have minted I can mint at any time additional stable coins. Or I could pay back stable coins. So you've got all these mechanisms. You can withdraw excess collateral, add collateral, mint stable coins, pay back stable coins. Keep your collateral health over 110 as an average in the system. Everybody has to stay over 150. So there will be some degens, and then there'll be most people that are going to be healthy. Usually the average tends to be between 200 and 400% is where most people park themselves. Now, when the value you get to keep the future price appreciation of the thing that you didn't want to sell to begin with, but you're still placing your value to work for you. You're getting a loan that in most cases is tax-free. You could do whatever you want with it. And there's no interest payment. There's no monthly requirements. There's a one-time borrowing fee at the beginning that's reasonable. It's 0.5%. That floats up to 5%, depending on the health of the system. But typically it's 0.5%. And that fee goes to the stakers in the protocol. Now that you understand how the borrowing and repayment works, let's go through the liquidation mechanism, because a liquidation is really just a repayment. So people fear the word liquidate. They think, I'm going to lose all my money. Well, on a central exchange, if you're leveraging, if you're doing 10x leverage or 2x leverage or 50x leverage, yes, you're going to lose all your money. This is almost like reverse of that, where you're putting in more value than you're getting out, and you're over collateralizing yourself. Now, the only way you could actually lose your money, because you have the stable coins in your hand, is if the value of PulseX falls to almost the value of what you already have in your hand. Right? So if that stuff got liquidated because the price of Pulse goes down, you might not even care. Right? Because you're like, I got all this money and the price continues to go down. So it's like a stop loss, right? But fully manageable, because you could have put in excess collateral health if you wanted to avoid that. Or maybe the price is going up and nobody cares because the price is going up, right? So you have all those stable coins. Now, there's this mechanism called a stability pool that is there to absorb any liquidations that might occur. You can place stablecoins into the stability pool for a portion of any liquidations, should they occur. Hopefully they're rare, right? And those stablecoins in that pool burn as if they're repaying the debt. And the PulseX from the liquidation gets spread to all the stability depositors. And at that moment in time, they're all up 10%. right? Because the collateral requirement was a minimum 110. That's where the liquidation point is for the vaults over there. So if you're in the stability pool and you capture one of those liquidations, you're actually up by 10%. Some of your stable coins burnt, but you accumulated more value worth of PulseX. But you can't just incentivize with only liquidations. That's not practical, because most people will choose to over collateralize and avoid liquidations completely. And in a bull market, you could see weeks that go by when nobody's liquidated. So how do you incentivize the people to stay in there? Well, you give them a stakeable token that's emitted out to the stability depositors. The people who are putting stable coins into that pool get an emission of this thing called the earn token. And that emission rate decreases forever, right? So the first year, the emission rate is half of the pool. The second year of the protocol, the emission rate is half of the remaining. The third year, half of the remaining. So it actually halves how many tokens get emitted out to the pool participants every single year. And it emits all the way down to the second, right? So you can go in the stability pool, you can jump in there for like 2 seconds, jump out, and you actually, or click claim reward or whatever, you might have like a little bit of fraction of these earn tokens because you're in there for 2 seconds, right? But if you stayed in there for a long time, right, you're just accumulating a lot of them. But what you want to do with those, what most of those people do with those earn tokens is they would go stake them, because that's where you collect the fees. Whenever there's a mint of stable coins, there's that one-time borrowing fee that gets shaved off of those stable coins and goes directly to the stakers of the earn token. So earn stakers are sitting there in the staking pool collecting stable coins every time somebody takes a loan out. Let's talk about what keeps the stable coin stable. This is the most robust peg in the history of all stable coins. You can go look at LUSD on Ethereum chain, and you can see it just doesn't like to go below $1. Other stablecoins, to include USDC and DAI and other things, have actually gone down to the 70 some cents for some time. And LUSD, $1, right? Let me tell you why. Because it's pretty awesome.
So people definitely want to know about the stablecoin. Somebody is asking here, what is the name of the stablecoin of PowerCity? Here's another question. What is the ticker of the stablecoin?
Yep.
Do you have an answer to that?
Yep. PXDC, PulseX dollar coin. The coin keeps itself at $1 nearly instantly all the time because of its redeemability. Every legitimate stablecoin in existence absolutely has to have a redemption function for it to stay at $1. So with USDC, for example, it doesn't stay under $1 for very long. If somebody dumps a bunch of USDC into a pool for ETH or something, right? They're actually changing the price or the ratio in that pool for a brief moment of time. But bots or people buy it back up again because they're like, oh, look, cheap stablecoin. Let me buy this stablecoin for 90 cents, slipped all the way up to $1. I'll get that whole price impact from 90 cents to $1 and buy myself some cheap stablecoins because I know I can send those USDC, or I hope at least that USDC sent back to Coinbase, they'll give me $1 for each one of those. That's a redemption. That's the arbitrage event for USDC. DAI has a similar redemption mechanism where you can send DAI back to the maker protocol, burn it back out of existence. It gives you $1 worth of ETH. And our protocol, Earn protocol, PXDC, can be sent back directly into the protocol. You click the redeem button, and it will give you $1 worth of PulseX. At any time, anybody can click redeem and get $1 worth of PulseX. It doesn't matter how thin or how thick the liquidity pools are out there in the world, in PulseX or Uniswap or anywhere else. Anybody who wants to, who has some, is guaranteed they can get $1 worth of PulseX for it by clicking one little button. So that's how the peg is so quick to jump back to $1, right? So if somebody dumps some and it moves the price, right behind them, people buy it because they know they can do a redemption, right? It actually could float above $1 a little bit. It would be super rare. You've never seen this on ETH, but it could go to $1.10 theoretically. You could have the stable coin, PulseX dollar coin that goes up to $1.10. But once it gets past $1.10, people are going to force liquidate themselves. People are going to remove all their excess collateral, or they're going to mint some stable coins at the lowest collateral health and force liquidate themselves so they can take those minted stable coins and go sell them and dump the price back down, right? So like it does have an upper price limit of $1.10. It's super rare that it would ever get there, but it is like impossible for it to go under $1 because of that redemption mechanism that people are guaranteed to get $1 for the PulseX. Now, I can explain how that function works. If somebody ever does a redemption, there's going to be, let's say you have some stable coins. You've got 100 stable coins you want to redeem, right? So you're like, oh, I can, by the way, it's cheaper just to go swap them. But if for some reason you want to click redeem instead inside the protocol and pay a 0.5% redemption fee, which also pays the stakers. So stakers get PulseX as well as PulseX dollar coin, by the way. The stakers of Earn are collecting PulseX whenever there's a redemption. So let's say you've got 100 of these stable coins and for some reason you want to click the redeem button. When you click the redeem button, the system looks at the lowest collateralized vault in the whole system. Maybe it's the guy who's way down at the bottom by 111%. All right. And as long as his minimum debt isn't below the requirement, it'll actually just pay off $100 worth of his debt. Those stable coins burn themselves out of existence, and $100 worth of PulseX leaves his collateral and ends up in your wallet. So you just paid his debt off for him, or forced him to pay his own debt off, because he loses $100 worth of PulseX, but $100 worth of debt is wiped. And it's the math on that is really interesting because it actually makes his collateral health go up.
That's interesting.
When you have, his collateral health, he may have been at 111%, and now all of a sudden he's at 130% because some of his debt is paid off.
It's but he has now less PulseX.
Yeah, he has less PulseX, but he also has less debt.
So interesting. What do you think? Like, will people abuse it and then just not do anything because they know it will? You know, somebody will pay the debt for them. Like, I guess this will happen, right? Maybe people just forget about it.
Well, it's not that somebody's paying the debt for them because they lose their PulseX. Some of their PulseX is collateral, equal, right? So let's say that $100 was redeemed against. Well, he's gonna have $100 worth of debt wiped clean from his debt, but he's also gonna lose $100 worth of PulseX. He paid for it.
Yeah,
he paid for it with his PulseX by giving his PulseX to you, and in exchange, you paid off $100 of his debt. Right? So he's not really getting anything for free. It's just closing that loop, right? So that anybody can mint these stable coins and then anybody else can redeem them if need be. It's just closing the loop.
That sounds really cool. I'm getting really excited to test it out myself once it comes out. And what we done today is we basically walked through the whole site PowerCity. We talked about the applications. There's only the Amplifier, which is the front end, and the Accelerator left. Is there maybe something else that you want to talk about before we go on to the next topic, which is the sacrifice phase that is still open?
So Amplifier is our custom front end. So as you've heard with the Earn protocol, you have lots of things you can do with a debt position, payback, mint more, etc. You also have the stability pool where you're earning rewards in there. You're earning that Earn token. And on occasion, you're earning some liquidated PulseX. And then over in the staking pool, you're earning PulseX every time there happens to be a redemption, which shouldn't be all that frequently, but you're also earning PulseX dollar coin whenever people mint it, right? So you got these three different pieces of the puzzle. And our amplifier allows you to automate various strategies. So you can, maybe you like the two staking pools, the stability pool and the staking pool, and you just want to compound your rewards back and forth. You can do that and automate it through our front end here. It's your keys, your coins, your smart contract. You can automate all your different strategies across any of the different pools or the lending or whatever. You just set it up how you want it to run. Click go, and the thing will run itself every day. And it'll just compound your coins back and forth and grow your position for you. A lot of people like, staking, and single-sided staking is going to be a cool thing over in PulseX. And similarly, people in liquid loans or an Earn protocol, they like to play those same games where they're staking here, staking there, minting more coins over here, yada, yada, right? So Amplifier just simplifies all that for you. And later on, you'll see an evolution into Accelerator where it carries across to other protocols such as PulseX and some other protocols that are being built out there. So you can just compound in all sorts of different directions.
So Jesse, if people want to participate down here, they see some more information about the team, for example, and how to contact. But if people are new to PowerCity, what are the first steps they can do to participate in the ecosystem, even though it's not out yet?
Yep. So the first thing is to come to our Telegram and learn, or follow us on Twitter. We have regular Twitter spaces. Sometimes hosted by KDP, who's a member of our team, sometimes hosted through our PowerCity site at PowerCity.io. I think we have a Twitter space on Saturday, maybe it's Friday. And check on there. I forget when the next one is, but come there, learn, go to our Telegram, learn. And we have some really cool tokens, right? So we have Watt. They can be staked for the fees. At an ever-increasing share rate using amps, which are much like a T-share, and fully transferable stakes, right? So that's really cool. Sustainable revenue over inflation model. Then we have Earn tokens, which can be staked for all the fees, the lending fees, right? Whenever somebody mints stablecoin, you can get a piece of that, right? If you stake Earn. People who are early will be happy. The earliest of people will be happy when they find these things, right? When they find the Watt they've been looking for, or the Earn token that they've been looking for, right? There may be a race to the door to get some. So the earliest of people may see that they already have some.
All right.
No expectations.
Question from Mike here. What are the fees for using the amplifier?
So you'll see that the fees are extremely reasonable. We're still working through some of the fees in the different places in there. When you're auto compounding across, and this thing is just taking your rewards from this pool and swapping and putting them into this other pool and vice versa, and you've got the power of auto compounding doing the work for you, you actually find that you grow your position exponentially faster than if you did nothing or were trying to do it on your own, clicking 100 buttons a day, right? So the fees are such that your position can still benefit greatly, and the stakers of Watt are also benefiting, which you'll probably also be a participant in anyway, right? So you've got to benefit the earliest of people or all the stakers in Watt, but you've also got to make it profitable for the people using Amplifier. When we launch on our public testnet, we want, which will be very soon, after V3 launches, we want people's feedback. Go through this thing, mash all the buttons, try and break it, and then also give your feedback. Do you like the fee? Is it appropriate? Is it too much? It's probably always too much, to be honest, like, because everybody wishes everything was free. So, have some realism, in your feedback. But we can't wait to give this to the community, have the community play with it and tell us what they think.
Amazing. So we went through the whole page here of PowerCity.io, and once you've been to the Twitter, to the Telegram, and you learned about PowerCity, and you want to get involved even more, well, now you can, because the sacrifice is still open. We can click here, and a site, sacrificenow.io, is opening up, and it is just telling us how the sacrifice was going, how long it is going already. And Jesse, maybe we can talk about that already. Like, it will be open until PulseChain launches, I see here. Is there any benefit? I do not want to say, but is it like so late to sacrifice now, or is it still in the means?
So people who choose to sacrifice are sacrificing for their statement that they believe in the right to a free market. You're not buying anything. You're not depositing money and expecting anything of value to come back to you. So it's, just like Jordan Peterson said. You had a clip of him at the beginning of your stream. Jordan Peterson often says people hope that the act of sacrifice brings them something of greater value in the future. And that's absolutely true here, right? So no expectations. Now, the sacrifice is open until PulseChain launches. It's at a 1-to-1 rate. It's been at a 1-to-1 rate, except for the earliest of people who didn't even have a website to look at, right? Those few handful of people got a better rate at the beginning. You see there day 1 through 10, but literally they were the earliest of believers. Nearly everybody else is 1-to-1. Now, there are multiplier bonuses if you've participated in some other cool things with the same wallet address during their open sacrifices. So if you use the same wallet address as a PulseChain sacrifice, you'll get 15.25% extra points. Points are only a representation of the power of your sacrifice. PulseX, you'll get an additional liquid loans, 12.5, internet money, 12.5. If you used a wallet address and participated in all 4 of those things, that's a really healthy bonus. That's what is that? 55.5%, right? So you can actually get some bonuses in that way. As milestones are reached throughout the community, when different levels are hit, there are random drawings to congratulate people or wallet addresses for their sacrifice, and there's bonus points that are applied to random wallets that are drawn on screen for the people to see. So no, it's not too late, not at all. And in fact, I think just now people are starting to learn about how awesome the tools that PowerCity is bringing to a free market, right? Our tools are supporting the free market of PulseChain in a big, big way. And, now's the time. Show your support. Because I actually think that PowerCity is establishing itself to be the biggest thing on PulseChain besides Richard Hart Products itself, which our stuff is built on top of or supports in one form or fashion. So now's the chance, y'all.
I wanted to get at the 1-to-1 rate. In the early phase of the sacrifice, it was 2-to-1, I believe. But still, this is a good rate because, like you are saying, you are developing more and more, and it has been gotten bigger, right? Since you announced PowerCity the first time. So it is just reasonable that the people, find it today, still want to participate because now they see, well, you even have the NFT Marketplace, you have the Amplifier, you have, all these other different dApps that are building on top of PowerCity and enhancing what people can do with it. And that's why I think people are getting exciting. So we talked about PowerCity.io, we talked about sacrificenow.io, and it's pretty much the same process as it is with PulseChain sacrifice, with PulseX sacrifice. The hexagons are pretty much aware of how it works. Is there anything else that you want to push out to the people that want to participate? What do they have to look out for? Is there anything else that they need to know maybe?
Yeah, so this community is absolutely amazing, right? When I go in the Telegram, look, I'm super busy, as are the other founders and team members. We are busy all day long, whether it's in meetings or it's through testing of our dApps, or it's talking with our designers, or we're doing some sort of marketing, or our video guys working on some sort of video and we got to look it over. There's a ton of work, tons of stuff that get done behind the scenes. And what keeps me motivated, and I could probably speak for the rest of the team, is when I go into that Telegram and I see some people that believe in us. There's literally people that when this thing goes live, they've got like $10 to their name and they believe in us and they think that this thing is going to be awesome because of all these tools and all this work we're putting into it. And I love to go in and talk to the small guys, the big guys. It doesn't matter how small you are. If you believe in us, we are here and we are no expectations, but we are bending over backwards to bring some amazing tools to PulseChain. And we are not going to sleep until this thing is awesome, until it's out there, people are playing with it, and it's bringing mass adoption to PulseChain. That's our main focus. Bring mass adoption to PulseChain and have some really cool tools for people to play with.
And not only the mass adoption part will be price beneficial, I believe also the whole mechanism of staking, you can also then borrow on your PulseChain, for example. All this will be beneficial for the price as well because people do not have to sell. And I think all of those things together, will just have such a nice benefit for the hexagons, for the PulseCons, in the future. So I'm so grateful for you and your team doing all this amazing job. And people definitely agreeing, they're liking what they're seeing. We have a lot of viewers here today everybody that are watching, you spitting out the knowledge and informing about PowerCity. So I'm really excited, everybody. And we did not get too many questions because everybody was really following what you are saying. That's always a good sign. But here are two more questions that I definitely want to show. Mike here, for example, Michael is saying that he sacked for 2 different pools right at the beginning. That wallet has since been compromised. Any solutions beside moving it first when launched?
Well, it sounds like you sacked through some sort of pool, right? That some people were running, maybe. You'll have to talk to the organizers of that pool. Any sacks come with no expectations. Of course, people mess up and lose their keys, and various things happen. So there is always like a process to make sure that everyone reach out to wherever you think you sack to, right? No expectations.
And Mike is saying that if he decides to sacrifice, he will be doing that right before PulseChain launches. It might take Richard Hart another 2 years to launch. Do you believe the same? Because I can imagine, like, I'm really excited, but I cannot imagine how excited you must be to launch PowerCity on PulseChain. So do you think Richard Hart will take another 2 years?
No, he won't take another 2 years.
So people are saying he is planning for the bull market. When the bull market comes out, he will then launch. Do you believe that too, that he's timing the market, that everything is already done? And, also not. All right.
No, I mean, he's telling us the truth. He's working through some sync problems, and he's trying to get it right.
That's what I'm thinking too. Like, he probably would have launched already, but I can also see the other side of the people that are saying, no, he is trying to time the market. So that's going to be really interesting, but I have the feeling it's not going to take too long anymore. One question that we got early on in the show, could you please talk about E-Hex versus P-Hex in terms of short and long time performance?
Well, once they split, right? Once you have both of those tokens, there's nothing that pegs their value back to each other. So it comes down to network effect. How many users on one chain versus the other chain? Now, you hear rumors that maybe somebody's going to pair those two things together in a pool. And while that may sound great, an entity is going to come and pair 1 billion E-Hex to 1 billion P-Hex. The ratios still are going to do whatever they do, because if people prefer to go onto PulseChain, those ratios are still going to get all lopsided in whatever direction people want to go. So no matter what you try to do, they're not going to necessarily be the same value. People are going to trade them. And unless you think that liquidity provider who paired those two things together is going to come and trade the opposite direction to put him back at the ratio he likes every single time and put in 24 hours of work a day to make sure that he keeps it that way, then no, they're just going to be completely independent and they'll form their own prices, probably based on the network. Are there more people participating on PulseChain because that's where Richard Hart and all the gang hang out? Probably, right? I think that'll probably over time have better price performance eventually. Not that Hex on ETH chain ever dies. You still have this narrative that you can still buy it and stake it and earn the inflation. So even if you're the last guy, you can, as long as there's a liquidity pool, Hex will still continue to function on ETH. But you did see that on the POW chain and the ETH Fair chain, those functions still exist and nobody cared. People still sold it, right? So even though you could bridge in value and you can buy Hex, you could buy $1,000 worth of Hex and you can stake it and then hope that it goes up in value and you have more coins than you started with and your stake ends. All of that mechanism still existed on those two other forks that we saw, ETH Power and ETH Fair. And nobody cared because the Hex community hung out on ETH chain. So those things still headed towards zero, right? So if the great migration does happen and everybody's hanging out on PulseChain, you could see something over time as stakes start to end and so on and so forth, where the ETH chain kind of gets forgotten about, especially as the gas fees over there, if they continue to go up, right? So only time will tell. I know there's people stuck in really long stakes over there. We'll have to see how that plays out.
Maddie is saying, hey, what's up, you all? And he cared when all that happened with proof of work and proof of fair. He was talking about that a little bit, I remembered. So I hear from your answer that you are not agreeing with Michael, for example, who's saying parity within a year. I mean, we are thinking about PulseChain, PulseX for a long time. We are thinking about eHex, pHex, what can happen? Can somebody provide so much liquidity that the pairs are bonded? It could happen, but I don't see it happening like anytime soon or forever actually, because it wouldn't make sense, right? At one point,
the supplies will diverge. The supplies will actually start to be different total supply of coins, right? Which in turn translates to a different market cap and like all sorts of different things, right? So just the idea that they're going to be one-to-one after within a year or 2 or 3 years, the longer time goes on, the supply difference will be a lot different. So how can you say that it's ever going to be price parity, one-to-one or whatever, right? You can't.
I think the argument is that the OA could provide so much liquidity into the billions of coins, where the normal market does not have as many coins, to move the price substantially below the one-to-one ratio, just because the market participants do not have enough hex. That's the argument.
That's a ton of work.
But the reason why I don't see it playing out like this is like, okay, it could theoretically happen, but there will always be a hex USDC pair on PulseChain, on Ethereum, and then people will then use these arbitrage opportunities. Then that's why I believe Richard Hart believes in a free market where he will not force the parity. I don't see that at all.
He's not. Look, here, he's already giving you free coins. He's making PulseChain and you already have your hex. Do you really think he's going to pair these things at parity so you can go get hex again a second time? Right? So you can trade the ETH for the PulseChain version a second time when he already gave it to you? Like, I just don't see what's in it for him or why he cares if people go back and forth. Why does it matter? The markets will bridge the value they want to back to ETH if that's where they want to participate, or vice versa into PulseChain if that's where they want to participate. Trying to force a volatile asset that goes up and down in value a lot. 90% dips are in the game. That's normal, okay? And then 10,000x run-ups, that's also in the game, all right? Cool. But trying to force two things with two different supplies to always match each other on two different chains with two different gas fees, it's too much work, and for what? Why? Why does it matter? So I think it's all a myth that that's going to happen.
I'm agreeing with you 100% here. At the end, it would be just like giving money away for free, because the arbitrageurs would, use every single arbitrage opportunity and just do what they can. So I don't think Richard Hart will do that at all. But obviously, it is fun to think about it. It's fun to talk about it with everybody, and then it's going to be fun to see how it's all going to play out. Well, Jesse, thank you so much for being here on the stream with us. It's almost 2 hours, and we had a couple of participation here in the chat as well. We were able to bring up the questions, and you definitely answered all my questions that I had about PowerCity.io. We also talked about the sacrifice that is still open. This is a great place where people can participate and have a statement for freedom of speech. I think that is so important, especially for times like we have here right now. Is there any last words that you want to mention to the community before we take off?
Thank you All this is possible from a community who's excited about PulseChain and wants cool things on it that make PulseChain easy to use and exciting. So thank all of you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Also, if you liked this stream today, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. And tomorrow, I'm on again at 7 p.m. EST, talking with the Hex Info community about Pulse Dogecoin, Pulse Bitcoin, and ASICs. If you're interested in that, I would recommend joining there as well. We see us tomorrow. I will now play the outro, and we are out of here. Thank you, guys.
If you could live forever, would you?
Yes.
Okay, we're
Don't
done
even
with the
have to finish the
interview.
sentence.
Yes. No. Okay. Sure. That's an attractive idea, but the way I look at it is the knowledge that I'm going to die that creates the focus that I bring to being alive. The urgency of accomplishment. The need to express love now, not later. If we live forever, why ever even get out of bed in the morning? Because you always have tomorrow. That's not the kind of life I want to lead.
But why don't you fear not being around?
I fear living a life where I could have accomplished something and didn't. That's what I fear. I don't fear death.
You don't fear the unknown.
I love the unknown. I love the. You know what I want on my tombstone? My sister has this in her notes, just in case I can't tell anyone after I die. On my tombstone, a quote from Horace Mann, great educator. Be ashamed to die until you have scored some victory for humanity.